Hello my friends and welcome to another video. This time, this is a different article in which it's just as has a very strong rivalry since the age of Nintendo versus Sega. And this article was submitted by approval through Big. Since he sent me the article, well, I gotta read about this one because this one, well, if we're talking about the greatest wars ever known, there's only been two. You see, as far as we gamers are concerned, there's only been two wars we've been involved in. That is the war between Nintendo versus Sega back in the 80s and 90s. And now, which RPG is better? Western or J? And, of course, like I said, this article comes from J-List blog. So here we go. The Western versus Japanese gaming wars are back. In a February Jimatsu roundtable, Square Enix producer Naoki Yoshida made comments about the upcoming Final Fantasy XVI's much darker direction, in a sharp change for what he calls a series about JRPGs or anime characters, or about teens running off saving the world. His interview with YouTube channel Skill Up during the same event caught the attention of gamers, however remarking how the game shouldn't be called a JRPG at all, believing that for some in Japan the connotation was like a discriminatory term. What ensued wasn't just an outburst of drama on social media involving shock and mockery around the old G4 Series X play. It had inadvertently reopened old wounds of both the old JRPG debate and the wider Western versus Japanese gaming wars, the embers of which sadly hadn't faded away. Let's turn back the clock to understand why this is happening now. JRPGs have had a long storied history going back to the early 1980s, giving rise to now classic franchises as varied as Shin Megami Tensei, Dragon Quest, Fire Emblem, and yes, Final Fantasy. Yet the mid-late 2000s, when the 7th generation consoles, the PS3, the Xbox 360, and the Nintendo Wii came to prominence, saw an almost abrupt shift in tone from lavish praise to varying degrees of disdain that go beyond just a bunch of poorly aged jokes. It raises the question, what actually happened? A problematic war. While it's still hard to tell what the original catalyst was, by the late 2000s, game journalists were already criticizing JRPGs for being too traditional or too linear, to say nothing of X-Play's mocking jabs. And to that I could say this: fuck you, X-Play. A destroyed interview with BioWare's co-founder Ray Mizuka and Greg Zichik from 2009 got the ball rolling, which they would repeat more in depth a few months later. They complained about how JRPGs were complacent and behind the times with innovations from the West, as quoted by a wholeheartedly in agreement Anthony Birch. The fall of the JRPG in large part is due to a lack of evolution, a lack of progression. They kept delivering the same thing over and over. They make the dressing better, they look prettier, but it's still the same. My favorite thing, it's funny when you still see it, but the joke of some of the dialogue systems were asked, do you want to do this or this? And when you say no, do you want to do this or this? No. Do you want to do this or this? No. Let me think. You want me to say yes. And that, unfortunately, really characterized the JRPG. Ah, yes, the but thou must. That's what people call it because that's why Dragon Quest labeled it as but thou must. Because you can't complete the story by going against the story. That's where Dragon Quest makes it but thou must. Over the next few years, similar refrains were invoked by gaming journalists and other personalities, aimed not just at JRPGs, but the Japanese gaming industry at large. In 2012, indie developer Phil Fish infamously declared modern Japanese games just suck, presenting his claims as ineffectual. That same year, Ubisoft creator-director Alex Hutchison claimed that critics were just too soft on Japanese titles because of subtle racism. I agree with that. And they're spotlighting their seemingly problematic issues compared to Western hits like Gears of War was long overdue. All the while describing Japanese games stories as literally gibberish. This also impacted at least a sizable number of Japanese developers when asked by CVG in 2010 about the apparent decline of JRPGs. Resident Evil creator Shinji Mikami mused it was because they weren't very popular from the start. Former Capcom executive Keiji Inafune not only seemed to accept the notion, but lamented to GameSpot in 2012 about myopic publishers' malaise, and they should also learn from the West. There are great big franchises like Skyrim, great titles for the iOS, the Call of Duty franchise, of course, but in Japan, there's nothing like Call of Duty or a similar franchise, so there aren't any titles spending a lot of development costs. Yes, of course. Moving on. What was I saying before? Let me read that again. There are great big franchises like Skyrim, great titles for the iOS, Call of Duty franchise, but of course, excuse me. I rather hold on my sneeze than try to, if I can help it. Take 3. There are great big franchises like Skyrim, great titles for the iOS. The Call of Duty franchise, of course, but in Japan there's nothing like Call of Duty or a similar franchise, so there aren't any titles spending a lot of development costs. There's nothing big, and no iOS titles can go global. Though the Western development scene may have its own problems, it's way healthier than the state of Japan right now. On top of denigrating the term JRPGs within Japanese circles, especially around Yoshi P's company, these merge into a persuasive narrative of decline stagnation that some developers, like Inafune, bought into. It not only seemed to lend weight to what gaming publications were saying, but also influenced them into dropping what made their titles beloved in the first place in favor of blindly chasing Western trends with very mixed results. Fallout and reality. As early as 2015, writer and Forbes contributor Ollie Barter took aim at a narrative that had become taken for granted by some. He argued that not only were those scathing attacks done in bad faith, but those pushing them had a vested interest. In any case, the ruse was a simple one. Avoid direct competition and undermining the culture of your opponent. Western companies have been thoroughly trounced in the previous console generation, as they already tried to combat the Japanese games industry head-on and come up decidedly short. Rebranding the competition as somehow culturally invalid meant they could position themselves at the top of a huge PR and marketing war. While the Japanese console market had reverted to the 1990s levels by the mid-2010s, not only helped Sony's rocky PS3 launch, its titles still managed to make waves domestically and abroad by building upon what they were already doing. Whether it's from Software's financially successful Soul series or the much more recent successes of Nier Automata, Bayonetta 3, and Octopath Traveler 2 among seemingly jaded Western audiences, as easy as it might appear to point at the failure of Square Enix Forspoken this year. The notion of Japan's gaming industry in decline is increasingly questioned in contrast to what's being churned out by the likes of BioWare and Ubisoft, with some wondering whether their downfall ever happened at all. This didn't stop some from trying to keep the wars going. One example is a 2018 interview with Yeek developer Andrew Alson proclaiming how Western indie creators like himself are pushing JRPGs forward, which does a disservice to indie works like Symphony of War, the Nephilim Saga, which are sincere love letters to the genre. Others have indulged in political and intellectual grandstanding, whether it's agreeing that JRPGs should be retired as an archaic term or slyly chasing Yoshi P for self-loathing. Then there's how publications like IGN, which wrote it, Japan's Decline, are now jumping the Japanese Renaissance bandwagon, writing out the successes of people like Castlevania and Bloodstained creator Koji Igarashi, otherwise known as Iga. At best, such antics betray a patronizing mindset, as if those pushing themselves always had the best interests of Japanese developers in mind, as highlighted by commentators as politically divergent as Devon Short Fat Otaku Del Vecchio and Jim Sterling. However, these also come off as racist and disingenuous. By painting Japan as somehow inferior to whatever is deemed progressive for financial or ideological gain. They gaslit a stigma that's contributed to an atmosphere of toxicity and ironic bigotry. Beyond jabs or memes, this has also reopened old wounds and risks fostering a new generation of hostility among gamers and developers on both sides of the Pacific. This doesn't have to end on a sour note, however. JRPGs and Japanese gaming in general continue to leave an incredible mark on pop culture despite the smear campaigns. The things that make them distinct also make them nigh universally enjoyable for fans everywhere. Perhaps building upon what brings us together may be just as essential as putting to those tasks responsible for propagating the gaming wars. Still, what are your thoughts on this whole situation? Feel free to add to the comments below. If you want to show your support for JRPGs, you can check out J-List Final Fantasy section. Look at this beautiful figure of Eris. Okay. Give me 2 seconds here. I'm going to clear the air here. Like so. Alright. What you're listening to is the background of Endless Frontier Exceed. That's the overworld. The different overworld of where I am in the game. Okay? Now, I want to show you something. This, my friends, is a JRPG. But not to mention the fact that it's not just a JRPG. But this is a fan-translated JRPG by a series that we haven't had come out in for so very, very, very long. And that's SRW. And it plays music from other parts of the franchise, which by in turn has brought together other franchises. Yes, Alchemy. Oh. Now, let me ask the question to the crowd out there. Is it fair that I play a JRPG or a Western RPG? Let's go to my channel and find out. Let's go directly to my channel and find out. Oh, let's take it. Let's even go further. Let me just close this out like so. Okay. Let's take a look at this, shall we? We're going to look at this in full, right? Now, what you just saw in just 30 minutes, 30 seconds, not 30 minutes. What you just saw in 30 seconds was basically everything I've ever done on my channel in under 10 years, in under 30 seconds. Basically, you saw games like Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy, Sakura Taisen, Sleeping Dogs, One Piece Pirate Warriors 4. And that's just to name the few that I've done over on this channel. And what is this I have here? Oh, let's see. What is this? This is Mass Effect Legendary Edition. What is this next to it? Oh, what is this? Final Fantasy Crisis Core. What is this? Oh, what is this? This is... I don't believe this. This is Endless Frontier Exceed, a game that has never been brought over here because of the fact that it was a Japan-only game, and fan translators opened the way for games of this caliber to come out. Oh yeah, what the hell is this? Oh, this fresh piece of hell, this is called Death Crimson OX. And what was it based off of? House of the Dead, which was a Sega franchise. What is this? Robotech. Who made this? Enix and Quintent. You know them better as Quintenix. That's why I call it Quintenix, because it was made by Enix and Quintenix. What is this? Evolution. Who made this? Ubisoft. You can look at all this stuff on my channel. I've covered many things over on my channel. Be it the worst to the enjoyable to everything in between this. And you're asking the question. The question being, has JRPG and was, the great question of all time, which was better? I could say this. JRPGs have something that Western RPGs do not utilize very often, and that is called imagination. It's like, say for instance, when I showed Mass Effect. I'm streaming Mass Effect over on my channel every Monday until I've beaten the first game. I'm not gonna go through all of Mass Effect, like the entirety of the game, but I plan to down the line. And that is quote unquote a Western RPG and a JRPG. A Western RPG is the following. It's basically an RPG with morals. And what does that remind me of? Oh, Ultima. Ultima, if you think about it, was a Western RPG. So was Ogre Battle. Ogre Battle had something of a morale system. A Western RPG basically did this. Because if you picture this, you had games like Mass Effect, Dragon Age, and to some degree Bioshock. And it all had this thing about your choice. That's what Western RPGs had that JRPGs don't have. Basically, your choice. How do you want to spin the story? Do you want to be a good guy? Or do you want to be a bad guy? Now note there's always consequences when you take that into consideration. Oh yeah, there's another one I almost forgot. Fable. Let's take that into consideration, shall we? They can say whatever the fuck they want to say, but here I say this. I play RPGs for a reason. I play it for the sheer fact that I can lose myself for a couple of hours and immerse myself into a game. Whether I'm streaming it or I'm recording it, I have already immersed myself into the game for a couple hours in, just to get past a certain part of the game. Just to say, oh, let me see if I can get past it. Let's see if I can do this. Let's see if I can do that. And mind you, my channel's been around since 2006. And what have I covered? Well, if you didn't know by now, it's a museum of underrated games. That's what it is. It's a museum of underrated games. That means games that have never seen the light of day. Even if they had a cult following, there are some games that just basically just say, you know what? We hadn't seen this. We hadn't seen this since I don't know how long, but you could damn well bet that we hadn't seen this game for so long. And I can tell you, I have been through this war before. And I can just say one thing. Say what you want, but an RPG is an RPG. It's like, I'd rather take both. I played my share of RPGs. And my ratio is like this. My channel is 95% RPGs and 5% everything else. You've seen the 90 and the 5 in 30 seconds. You see what I do on my channel. And what I see is this. I have no problem playing a JRPG straight through. I play Ys. I've played Tales. Tales is like off and on for me, but I play Tales. I play the Tales series. Some I do like, and some I don't like. I play games like Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, it's a JRPG. It's an action RPG, but still a JRPG anyway. Front Mission. Hard to tell if it's a Western RPG or a JRPG. I will say, since it's tactical and it feels like it's a Western RPG, we're going to go with that. It's a hybrid. I feel that if you're going about trying to say, oh, this is what's going on. I'm with Team JRPG. I'm with Team WRPG. Like, man, come on now. You can learn to appreciate both. It's like this. I can appreciate playing Persona because my friends talk about Persona. I've never played a Persona game before. 5 Scramble was my first one. Then it was 3 Portable on the PSP, in which I had to basically do the following. Find a ROM, but find it tweaked to where, oh hey, I don't have to play it like regular P3P. It saves me time, it saves me money, and in the long run, hey, it's like it's customizable. I feel, in the interest of fairness, we as gamers, we know when we need to just step the fuck out. Because, we created our own faction too. And we're not ashamed of it. You got Let's Players. You got VTubers. You got face cammers. You got those playing with viewers. And the one thing I can say is that games over here, especially if it's RPG, yeah, some things just don't work. I mean, if it's going for, it's like this. Every single Western RPG always has this grim, very apocalyptic view. And I would say this, another series that I know people find so damn interesting is Fallout. And I'm like, you never see me play Fallout because I would get too bored of it real quick. So, give me something like Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Dragon's Dogma. Okay, I'm interested. Hell, even I would say, hook me up with Ghost of Tsushima. Excuse me. Yeah. If I hook me up with Ghost of Tsushima, I'm going. Give me something with some meat. I don't need to have DLC to enjoy it, but it helps. It helps for mileage if I wanted to do like the extra stuff. If it adds to the game, great. Awesome. If it doesn't, you know what? That's all well and good. you can't really just say, you know, we made our own factions. We have gamers have made their own factions for years from from the 80s. You had those who played Nintendo and those who played Sega. And then once the later consoles came out, you got those who were on Team Sony, and then there were those who were Team Microsoft. So it's like we all have factions, but the one thing that kept us together is we played the game. We didn't care what it was, but we played the game. We all shared our love for the game. I mean, if we take it back, the one game that basically transcended across many different consoles. It was the only time it really happened was Soul Calibur. Because Soul Calibur, which was the second game in the Soul Edge series, who started off? Oh, arcade. Then it went to PlayStation. Then after that, Dreamcast. And then eventually PS2, GameCube, Xbox, PS3. Another series, Tekken. Another series, Musou, Dynasty Warriors, Gundam. Different ports, but it played the same. And we enjoyed the hell out of them. Now, I feel immersion was basically the one thing that we all had. And I feel back in the day, especially during the time of, say, the darkest time Sega ever had was when they made the Saturn and the Dreamcast. And what was the one thing that was basically the hardest hurdle they ever had to overcome? Acceptance. That's the reason why Japan has always felt so standoffish towards stateside. Because even though Japan's been doing it for years, as when it came to later, especially when it came down to, say, the Dreamcast and the Saturn, they never ported anything more than they could because of the gamers. They were so afraid that the gamers on our side of the world would not be willing to accept them. That's what it all comes down to. Sure, anybody can play Fortnite. Anybody can play Overwatch. Anybody can play Jackbox. WWE. The list goes on. We're so willing to do the following is to accept bullshit games but when it comes down to us coming together and just respecting the game, respect, our own culture, we don't fully accept our own kind. And I can tell you, I play retro games. and I find them more enjoyable than say now, because now it's like usually people constantly complaining about Western games. They become too hard. They become too this, too that. I'm like, well, guess whose goddamn fault it is? It's like with the big stink about Hogwarts Legacy. Y'all made a big stink about canceling people, doing horrible things to people that are playing the game, and yet you expect people to actually come across, say, this stupid ass war between which is better, Western RPGs or Japanese RPGs. Let me take you back, okay? Let me take you back to when anime was up and coming. And let me take you further back to when we actually had an isekai called Auto Battler Donbai. And you know what the first thing you hear is like, there's some sort of racism between Todd Guinness and Shozama. Yankee and Japanese. Now you talk about old wounds. That's like an old wound. We will never come together as a people, let alone as a nation, without actually understanding that we have to accept what comes and goes over here. We look down our own kind. And I get my share of people who, if they show up at my stream, or if they look at my videos, they seem to have this stupid, idiotic idea of just looking down at my skill because it's not adequate enough. And I'm probably not the only person who has ever been through this kind of mess. People who look down for those who say, you use cheats. I'm like, yeah, I use cheats. I use save states. I use whatever means to get the job done. It's like even with one of the main games I'm playing now, Endless Frontier. Yes, I'm using a cheat that you wouldn't realize I've been using all this time, and that's for level grinding. I've been secretly level grinding on top of what I've been doing. So therefore, oh hey, I am level grinding. But I'm picking up levels just like that. Or the fact that why the Frontier Guide doesn't go down. It's like, well, think about it. The enemies play cheap. You use one piece of your Frontier Gauge, and it goes down to half. And you're dealing with a hard as hell boss in that game that's constantly doing like what, 20 to 50 hits worth of damage on you. and it's like a almost a full party wipe. Oh no, no, we're not having that. So yeah, using cheese and like there are some people that I don't want to use cheese because whatever kind of morals they have, whatever kind of morals they have, they're welcome to them. But I say I use cheese sometimes in order to even the score. That's why I use cheese. Because in some JRPGs, you come across that one boss. Even in a Western RPG, you come across that one boss. It'll basically be like the wall. If you don't get past that one wall, you might as well throw the goddamn game away. There have been like a rise in so many games that game franchises that, yeah, they're coming up. Because it's like this. What does the West have to offer? Let's see. You got the Soul series, which is basically almost a dime a dozen. Or just about a dime a dozen. You have, as I said, FPS games. Whether they be party or, or story based, you got those kind of games. And then you got that very small percentage of games that just like it's just there to be there, Yes, I know. You're streaming. Who cares? I know. You're live. Yeah, whatever. Moving on. I'm still doing a video, so it has to be said. I feel that when G4 came out, it basically just left all of us and far and wide, it showed us the ugliness, the toxicity that is known to gamers everywhere. And it just showed, basically, yeah, we've been giving these kind of games for so many years this unneeded hatred for so long that we don't even realize we're actually destroying our own culture, and we need to stop that. That's what I feel we need to do. We need to stop doing what we've been doing for years on end. Basically, it's just like with racism. Racism is still sadly alive and well, and it's the same thing that goes with what we're going through. Because, you're online, you're a target. Whether you show your face or you don't show your face, you're a target. I'm not trying to become one, but yet I show my face too, but I don't show it very often. Point is, what you need to learn is that when you're a gamer, it's best to keep your head in the game. Keep the politics out of your game. That's what we need to do. We need to keep any kind of politics out of our game. Religion, whatever. Keep anything real world out of the gaming world. That's what we need to stand up for. That's what we need to fight for. And it means so much if we, not just you, but we, as a collective unit of people who are linked to the hip by this network known as the internet. This global phenomenon. This worldwide community of people that we have not even heard or seen, that show up in our streams, that post on our YouTube videos, that follow us on our social media, all that, and then some. There's some things we need to take a stand for, and one of these things have to be to keep certain things away and out of our games, and to be more like a community instead of being, factions. Because, name brands and factions, like, I'm on team such and such, and I'm on team such, like, no, we don't need that. We don't need that. We had enough wars going on to last us a lifetime. We deal with the games that we play. That should be the only time, and I do mean the only time, we can actually get away from the ugliness of reality. We should never bring the ugliness of reality into our universe. It should be peaceful. It should be more tranquil. Just think on that. We're gamers. When we play games for that one reason, to take the edge off of life's hardships. It's why I record. It's why I make all these Let's Plays for plain long years, because basically it keeps me alive. It keeps my sanity. It gives me a sense of purpose. It gives me all sorts of things that basically most people have never thought about, and it is something that is beyond all definition. So about this, you got your share of JRPGs. I mean, come on, we got Pokemon, Digimon, Ys, the Tales series, Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, and God knows what else. And anything you can see about it, it's never boring. It's always something. It's just like, pah. That's the difference that Western RPGs have against JRPGs. JRPGs are colorful. Western RPGs are drab. If not drab, they're lifeless. If not that, there's something else. But it doesn't have, color. You wonder why I play more games with a colorful background than, say, what I stream sometimes. I said, that's the only reason. I feel like I want to play something with, some color. And, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with playing a game with color. And there's nothing wrong with playing a game that's totally drab. But, sometimes your mood, it kind of fluctuates. So both are needed. But more times than any, I want color. I live in California, for God's sakes. We're in the middle of a rain right now. Guess what I'm seeing when I get up? Gray. That's what I'm going to see. I'm going to see gray. So I want to see some blue, some yellow. I want to see some color. I want to see a little something. Whether I go outside or not. Of course, I'm not going outside if it's going to be raining. That's for damn sure. But that is something for another time. My point is, what we should be fighting for as a collective unit of LPers, streamers, gamers, or rather, not just gamers, LPers, streamers, playthroughs, and what have you. People who play with webcam, without webcams, come together. We all need to come together. Whether you want to, whether you're, whatever you want to be, you're freaking idol, okay? VTubers, you're basically copying off of Sharon Apple, okay? That's all you're doing. You're becoming your own Sharon Apple, your own Lin Min Mei. You're becoming a pop idol. Nothing wrong with that. Because remember, Japan has influenced us in so many ways. It has influenced the entertainment industry. It has basically brought more and more out to us than we can imagine, especially anime, automobiles, technology, all that, and then some. So we just need to come together. And really, we just need to make a stand. Just say, I just enjoy playing a game. That's all there is to it. I enjoy playing a game. And if I play for a couple hours, I just did myself a favor. I did my sanity a favor. And my sanity thanks me. So with that, I say, this was a look at this article that I had to basically come out and just say, you know what? I had a lot to say about it. And I don't apologize for anything I said about it. Because, there are games that do need more exposure than others, and some less than others. But it just needs to be fairly balanced. That's all. So, until next time, whatever I plan on putting up, I've been your friendly neighborhood Tenkaichi. And I'll see you next time with something else. Until then, take care and Tenkai Muso. Bye, Tinsel.